Hello and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN Content Capsule. It's a bright, beautiful Monday morning and we welcome you back to the program. I am Keaton Shaw.
And I'm Sean Michael Small, and we're both in HD, just to make that clear.
Yes, we are. We're in HD this morning. And not so much on Saturday and Sunday, but this morning, definitely. Sean, how are you doing? How was your weekend?
It was tiring.
I could never understand that.
Yeah, it's just that's just the way it goes.
What did you do?
I don't know, stuff.
You slept all weekend, didn't you?
No, I wish. I wish.
I wonder what stuff that refers to. You probably had an exciting weekend. So it's good to see you this morning.
It was alright. It was okay. It was fun. It was different. Yeah.
Well, let's not get into those stories. Those stay with the weekend.
Yeah, those stay with me.
Those stay with the weekend. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen.
These ones are for you.
As we get into the analysis of the latest happenings here in TNT, we begin today's program with your daily review. Well, with the news that the Minister of Health, Terence Yeltsin, has tested positive for COVID-19, it's very interesting to see statistics now circulating via social media and via the news articles as it relates to the number of registered nurses here in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, a name that is all too familiar to us, Sean, Edie Stewart, who is the head of the Registered Nurses Association of Trinidad and Tobago, says there's a shortfall of 3,709 nurses here in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, this figure was posted to TTRNA's Facebook page following a release after they received information via the Freedom of Information Act based on data requests made to the country's 5 regional health authorities between 2020 and 2022. Now, the issue that the Registered Nurses Association is saying that even during the COVID-19 pandemic, before the COVID-19 pandemic, and now, though we're still in a pandemic, we've opened up from lockdowns, there still is no nurse-to-patient ratio that is actually in place.
And that will affect healthcare. I believe most foreign jurisdictions, first world countries, would have things like that doctor-to-patient ratio, nurse-to-patient ratio, depending on the type of medical care provided, to ensure that standards are being met. Because at the end of the day, this is not like somebody stocking shelves or even a journalist. You're talking about a job where if you're overworked and fatigue sets in, whether you fall asleep or you're wide awake but your judgment is affected, it could impact seriously the lives of other people. And the other thing about that though is that this is an ongoing thing, like you said, before COVID. It makes me wonder with regards to the question of resources. We had foreign exchange problems before COVID. We had oil and gas revenue problems before COVID. Healthcare, public healthcare, you can't have it free, you can't have it with a capacity to give it to everybody, and you can't have it with high quality, right? You can't have all 3 things at once. So now I'm wondering, in a country where we suppose that there is corruption at multiple levels, everybody has probably experienced a touch of it here and there, but to say that we truly know to what extent it has or does not have, is difficult to say. But what we know in other countries that are supposed to be very heavily corrupt is reportings could be misleading. Don't necessarily give the correct data. Tell the people at the top, yeah, everything is fine when everything is not fine. Because Mr. Stewart said something interesting there where he thinks that the RHAs have been providing incorrect statistics to the ministry. So while I'm not necessarily going to say, well, that's the problem, the ministry is off the hook and whatever, I do have to, point out, in a country where we think there's corruption, why do we expect some things to be running fine and perfectly?
I think also part of the problem is, putting corruption aside for a moment, I'm speaking about now the management of the healthcare sector. $7,507 is the basic salary of a registered nurse in TNT. Now, recently, I know there were recruitment agencies that came to Trinidad and Tobago. Edie Stewart highlighted that as well, saying that nurses are turning to greener pastures with opportunities abroad. Now, in the United Kingdom, the average salary of a nurse is between £24,000 and £25,000 sterling per year. Now, just bear in mind, the cost of living up there differs to the cost of living here in Trinidad and Tobago, so we have to bear that in mind. But if the issue for the healthcare system here in Trinidad and Tobago is really the management and the funding, if we do not have the ability to actually fund these hospitals, this running and the staffing of these hospitals, given the fact that I don't know when was the last time you've been to Mount Hope. I went to Mount Hope recently, I think last year, early last year, or late 2021, we actually went to Mount Hope and conducted a couple of interviews.
Yes.
And the number of patients that you see there on a daily basis is quite astounding, to say the least. Is it time that we start charging for healthcare here in Trinidad and Tobago?
I think it depends.
Okay.
I think it depends on what we're charging for. And the problem is, I think that's a very complex question, because there are some things that it might be a benefit to society to still be free, and other things that's like, well, hold on. This really, do we need to give this out for free? Is this workable? Is this practical? And I'm not a healthcare professional, so I don't know what it is. What I do suspect, however, is that to some extent, everybody takes our healthcare situation for granted. I think the political class does. Yeah. I think the public, to some extent, does. I remember somebody was telling me, giving me a story about a gentleman in a pharmacy who was complaining heavily about the government while going to collect his thousands of dollars of free medication. And it was just like, we're not talking like a pill for $300, you know, a bottle of pills. Thousands of dollars in one go of free medications. And to what extent now, because therein lies the other question, we could be taking it for granted as to how much is being done for us. It might not seem like a lot, but there are a lot of people who benefit from it. But then now, do we not take care of ourselves because certain aspects of healthcare is easy to access, or relatively easy to access, or affordable? I
think to a certain degree, yes, and I've made that argument before on this platform, given the fact that because it's just so easy to get medical treatment, and there are going to be some viewers who will express their difficulties, as they have before in this program, with respect to accessing medical treatment. But the issue is, if you know that you have access to free medical health care, you know, regardless of the situation that you're facing, you can simply walk into any RHA-run facility and you are going to receive treatment. It might be delayed, but you're going to receive treatment and you're not going to get a bill at the end of it. CDAP is what you were speaking to.
Yes.
And a lot of these individuals actually benefit from CDAP. Some have been saying they're not getting their medication via CDAP, and that they're getting generic products via CDAP. That's another issue entirely. But I think we don't take our healthcare seriously here in TNT, and that's part of the issue as well. But back to the story about the number of nurses. If it is that we want quality healthcare, if it is that we require quality healthcare, which we do, people will make the argument, and I can understand that they already pay health surcharge. So what more are you going to charge us for healthcare here in TNT?
But
it's not equitable.
Is that really going to cover it? Because
it's not equitable.
If we want high quality healthcare, we're going to have to live with one of two things. Either they're going to be long wait times, excessively long wait times, the higher up you want to go. We can't afford to have enough capacity for brain surgery for everybody that needs it at the drop of a hat. It's just impractical. It's going to be very expensive, and half the time you're going to have brain surgeons just lying around, you know. Could you do pediatrics? No, I'm a brain surgeon. That's what I do. But the other thing is, okay, we want to have it, again, high quality. Goes back to what you asked with regards to then how do we keep it free / affordable? Because I guess with health surcharge, you could argue it's not exactly free. You're not exactly paying, it's in that gray area. How do you balance those things out? Or do you sacrifice certain things and say, well, look, certain things you have to go for private because they can maintain that better? I don't think there's any silver bullet answer here, and we can't necessarily look to say, okay, what do they do in America? What do they do in Sweden? No, they're different countries. Economies are set up differently, you know, so your costs, your standard of living, your training, who you can attract, how you retain your doctors and nurses, all of the factors are going to be somewhat different. Your society is different. Your needs are different.
Even the NHS in the United Kingdom is struggling. They have many vacancies available, but even the NHS in the United Kingdom,
well, that's why they're coming here,
have been struggling. But as you said, and I agree with your point, I don't necessarily think it's a matter of trying to figure out how we can maintain this as a free service. I think it should become an affordable service. I think that is what it is, because as pointed out previously, it has to do with affordability here in TNT. We're not the rich nation as we were 10, 15 years ago. We're no longer in that bracket. That is why I'm saying, if it's to be subsidized rather than just made available free, and I also think that people will actually start taking their healthcare a lot more seriously as well.
Yeah, and people do need to consider that. Look, ultimately speaking, the best doctors are not going to slave away at medical school for a moderate to minor salary all their life, right? Some will, but not all of them will. So it's difficult to have free, high-quality healthcare.
Have you ever seen a poor doctor, though? There are two things. Have you ever seen a poor insurance company or a poor doctor?
Poor is relative. I might have known there was one doctor in Tobago, his fees to just do to just go to his office was exceptionally low. Like exceptionally low. And his office did not look rich, he did not look rich.
Which points to something. That doctor was probably one of very few who was actually more concerned about serving people and providing good health care. But anyway, let's move on now to the next story. And this is with the Insurance Authority. Now, recently we raised a story with respect to the licensing of homes here in Trinidad and Tobago. No further updates on that as yet. But the Insurance Authority continues to urge everyone to speak out against acts of violence that they witness, because on average they receive between 4,000 and 5,000 reports of child abuse every year. Now, child abuse happens in various forms, whether it be physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, emotional abuse. My question is, how many, on average, we receive between 4,000 and 5,000 reports every year? How many of these cases are actually investigated and resolved? Because they didn't give that statistic.
Right, yes. Because, some of them might be the overzealous person reporting something and it's not as bad as they make it out to be. But that's not going to be the majority, I would imagine, right? That's why you have to investigate, of course, innocent and proven guilty. More importantly, where are the consequences? And I think with a lot of the issues that we speak about, one of the problems is there's no consequence for whatever it is, whether it is public utilities, government, police, whatever. So in this situation now, and I kind of go back to the observation of, we made a big fuss when a young woman died, and rightfully so, but now children and old people are being gunned down in broad daylight in front of people. And we seem to just kind of be taking it, in stride. I'm not surprised that child abuse is to some extent, we're not necessarily seeing public outrage. I'm not surprised. Mm-hmm. And to what extent is it being investigated? Well, if the criminal justice system is the way how it is, why do we expect, again, if we have problems elsewhere, why do we expect specific areas to be working well? Mm-hmm. We also should not be surprising just because of that. We can't get 50% of murderers off the streets. Why are we going to expect 50% or more of child abuse cases to be investigated? Not even convicted, just investigated.
You would assume that it might be easier, again, relative, as compared to investigating a murder. But I could be wrong. There's so many factors.
Say the child is 3, and the wife or the husband does not want to incriminate their spouse, and there's nobody else in the household. Then what?
Then who made the reports?
Right. It could have been somebody who doesn't live there permanently. Like, we don't know, right? Or one of the spouses could have made a report and then recanted. Why?
Which has happened before.
Exactly.
And that has happened before.
So I would argue that, no, technically speaking, investigating a murder in some respects should be easier.
And you just write it off as gang related, eh?
Well, that's not so much investigating. That's just
easy.
That's just covering your behind from difficult questions.
I would be more interested to know what is the statistics as it relates to the Insurance Authority of their success. Statistics equating to success, because since this authority was established in 2015, exactly what has it done and exactly what has it achieved? Because I think we have a fair understanding of what the Insurance Authority is supposed to be as a statutory body, but exactly what have they achieved in the 7 to 8 years they've existed?
It's funny that you could ask that question with regards to at least the last 2, maybe even 3 administrations, although the Patrick Brown administration might say, well, we did Gates, which is technically true, but they just one-upped dollar for dollar. You could ask that like, okay, what did this ministry do, what did that ministry do, what did the next ministry do? So it's, again, to have the expectation that Children's Authority is making great strides, to some extent, if great strides were being made, wouldn't it be kind of foolish to not let the public know about it on a political level? So, but more importantly, we get these reports now, and I kind of have a hard time thinking that great strides are being made, because where's the messaging now to encourage people to make reports and to stand firm and to not give in to the temptation of, well, how will the child do without a parent? When it is the parent who is potentially abusing the child and making the child's, life worse. Yes, technically it would be optimal for a child to have all of its family members to support it. But sometimes, you have addition by subtraction when the person is abusive. So, I don't know. I don't really have expectations for government agencies anymore. I'm going to be honest. How many times do we say we've been talking about this or we've been talking about that for 10, 20, 30 years and we see no results? So we have a Children's Authority. It hasn't even been a decade yet, but what really? Yes, that is a good question. What have they done except give us a report?
I can't blame you for your way of thinking. I can't, because generally here in TNT, you use it in government agency, and I agree with you. I think anything to do with the public service, I have very little hopeful. Very little hopeful. We see what's taking place now with the Motor Vehicle Authority of Trinbago and licensing office.
Yeah.
And cars, chassis number, registration number, etc. That's just one example. And I don't want to change it too much, but I was just thinking in that light, in that vein. You're having issues with that, but I wonder how long it takes for any government minister to get approval for the new vehicle and tax exemption and whatnot. That's just one example that I'm putting to the side. But overall with the Children's Authority here in TNT, I can't speak to any success of it. Maybe we can be educated here on Talking Point. Maybe somebody could inform us or enlighten us, but at this point in time, very good to give us statistics of reports, statistics of your success rate and how many of these have actually been resolved annually is a different story. Anyway, moving forward now, final story. I just wanted to raise this. I don't know why in this day and age we're still facing this nonsense, Sean. But the United National Congress Couva South constituency actually issued a media release on Thursday, last week Thursday. And it is in response to Minister Gonzalez and the Water Surge Authority. Now, I'm going to read it for you very quickly. The Couva South constituency executive strongly condemns Minister of Public Utilities Marvin Gonzalez for attacking our Member of Parliament, Rudranathan Darsing, for standing up to the wicked Rowley administration over its failure to provide constituents of Couva South with a reliable water supply. Marvin Gonzalez has no right to refer to MP Darsing as a Nimakaram when Minister Gonzalez himself has proven to be a Kulachan, blighting every agency under his line ministry, including WASA, TNTech, and others. Now, it went on to elaborate about the blighting of all these agencies under his ministry. But he went on to, this actual release went on to say, the Couva South executive calls for an end to the political and geographic discrimination from Minister Gonzalez, Chairman Ravi Nanga, and the Water and Sewage Authority, and reject the current once in 14 years water supply. It is time for the people of this country to make this Kulachan minister and his Lafabagu Rowley government Suske at the polls.
So, now, colorful speech aside, I would just like to point out that when we actually speak about the issues at WASA, part of the problem seems as though the government can't, do anything about it. They've been talking about it since, 2018? So this is year 5. WASA has been lined up behind Petrotrin for 5 years, and we haven't seen any sort of real attempt to restructure WASA to get it healthier. So the issues, the immediate cause of the issues are internal to WASA. Of course, the government is the overall overseeing body, so they bear ultimate responsibility. So I do find that, just saying that Minister Gonzalez, he has blighted WASA, that oversimplifies the issue, and it makes it sound as though WASA was fine, WASA was great, efficient, there was water for all. We just had one more pipe to install before Minister Gonzalez came, and then all of a sudden everything went to hell. Well, no, it's not that simple. So already the UNC starts off on a bad foot for me on a technical level, because I have a hard time taking anything that they say seriously when their chain of events is blatantly just overly politicized. They're not wrong to blame the minister. He has ultimate responsibility in so much as a minister can, on the day-to-day workings of a state entity, public utility like WASA, right? So they're not necessarily wrong. Where is the change that we were told was coming to make things better? I get it, but how you do it? Then on top of that, of course, don't double down. Don't double down. If somebody does something that you want to say is, oh, this is bad, don't do it yourself. This is not a schoolyard where, well, he hit me face.
You see, this is the issue for me. I have no issue with you wanting to respond to the issues. Again, even the Prime Minister said it. An effective opposition is good for Trinidad and Tobago overall.
But the Prime Minister said it too?
Yeah, the Prime Minister said that. Keith Rowley actually said that. You see, the thing that irks me is that in the same line that you're criticizing the minister for referring to Rutrinath and Darting as any makaram,
exactly,
you go on to use all these phrases. Now, usually nothing is wrong with this level of language, but when you read this entire release, you're making the job of journalists a lot more difficult in TNT. I don't know how they're supposed to analyze this to actually put this in the newspaper, unless you want them to put the entire press release in the paper. But furthermore, you're just taking away from your messaging, and you're taking away from your arguments. You're actually causing a great distraction, because for me, as an individual, I should see through this nonsense and just analyze exactly what is being said. Which brings me back to my point of it's so distracting, because the one thing that stood out to me from this entire release was the jargon. Yes, that's the one thing that stood out to me.
Which is funny. I initially, when you sent the release to me, I was trying to avoid the jargon. I'm like, all of this is just not worth my time. But then you pointed out the fact that the most unfortunate thing about it was the excessive.
I think it's rather interesting that what the opposition is opposing is what they're practicing. That just tells you a lot about where they're at.
We have to go to break, but I have two observations to make that I find gets more and more ironic. First, with what you just said, even the Prime Minister it's no longer worth it for him to have an ineffective opposition. For even him, that's how bad it reached. It's even bothering him too much for him to make that comment. I say that in tongue in cheek. But more seriously, usually what do we say? Well, the government might say this to kind of distract you. But I find the opposition is more distracting than the government more often than not. We going down with a serious issue in the national discussion, and then it takes a left turn because they say something out of left field. And this, again, what is the point? Is the point about the water for the people in Couva South, or is the point to see who could win the name-calling game in the media?
Lost in translation. Anyway, Couva South constituency, I really hope many people across TNT are facing water issues. Thankfully, there is no actual water restrictions in place at this time, no water schedule. But that being said, a lot of people are facing difficulties. I know for one, a few people in this office have actually have been facing difficulties for months now. That being said, to the constituencies and the executives and the MPs, try and do better with your communication. Honestly, really, grow up. Anyway, Trinidad and Tobago, let's take a break here on Talking Points, and when we return, we'll continue this morning's conversation.
people really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We the police officers, we are professional and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, it's for all of us in public.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Trinidad, come and get blessed at the Good News Fest. Free groceries while stocks last and lots of giveaways like appliances and toys and much more with live music at each venue. 3 days only in South, March 30th at number 4 Recreation Ground, Palo Seco from 4 p.m. In Central, March 31st at Ancient Alley Promenade, Couva, 6 p.m. And in the East, April 1st, Macoya, Savannah, Macoya, 6 p.m. It's the Good News Fest, 3-day family event, March 30th to April 1st. Lots of giveaways after an encouraging word shared.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, if you've been watching the international news, you've been keeping track of the numerous different protests that happen around the world for various issues. Some of them could be because of disasters like in Greece, with the man-made accident that happened with 2 trains colliding on the same track. Of course, we covered the French situation where the population is up in arms against the planned increasing of the retirement age. And in Israel, even after the somewhat controversial election formation of a very ultra-conservative government over in Israel, now things have been taken up, I guess you could say, a second notch with reformations to how their judicial system operates in order to basically, as the government, I believe, Prime Minister Netanyahu is trying to say, put things back into balance so that the judiciary can't overstep. My words, not his. For more on this, let's take a look at the clip. It's time for Cue This.
Mass demonstrations have taken place in several Israeli cities after the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sacked his Defence Minister. Yoav Gallant was dismissed after he called for controversial plans to overhaul the justice system to be scrapped. In Jerusalem, thousands of protesters gathered outside the country's parliament, and in Tel Aviv, demonstrators blocked one of the main highways. Azadeh Mishiri reports.
It was a sudden outpouring of rage. Hordes of protesters continued to fill the streets in the early hours of the morning. Demonstrations have been going on in Israel for months, but these protests were spontaneous as people surged into action.
Everyone here served in the army, and they are serving too, and we are going to protect the democracy. We are here for the democracy. Bibi is not here for the democracy. Thank you very much.
The protests were triggered by a one-line statement. Israeli TV broke the news that the Prime Minister had sacked the Defence Minister, Yoav Gallant. Mr. Gallant is a member of the governing Likud party and a former senior general in Israel's defence forces. He was the first to break ranks with the Prime Minister. He said giving the government final say over all judicial appointments and weakening the powers of the Supreme Court was a threat to Israel's security. It cost him his job. Mere hours after his sacking, Israel's consul general in New York quit. He tweeted, "It is now time for me to join the fight for Israel's future, to ensure it remains a beacon of democracy and freedom in the world." Mr. Netanyahu insists the reforms will stop the courts abusing their powers and that the people of Israel voted for them in the last election. These crowds don't agree. They took over Tel Aviv's main Ayalon highway. They set fires on major roads, and a game of cat and mouse ensued in Jerusalem. Protesters evaded Israel's security forces, breaching barriers outside Mr. Netanyahu's home.
This has to be stopped. This Prime Minister is not qualified anymore.
Prime Minister Netanyahu is determined to push the legislation through this week. But protesters are calling for more demonstrations. They're insisting that they are the ones defending Israel's democracy. Azadeh Mishiri, BBC News.
Yes, I think it did come as a shock. There was, last night when he spoke out, there was a sense that perhaps he was coming to the end of his time in the Likud because he was speaking out against the major policy that it's putting forward. But I don't think anyone expected him to be fired within 24 hours for, in the end, saying he did support the policy. He just thought it should be delayed and that it should be brought with something more of a majority view. I understand that tonight there was a very tense meeting between the Prime Minister and his Defence Minister in which Netanyahu asked Gallant point blank, how will you vote in the parliament? After all, the vote on this is meant to be happening this week. He said, how will you vote in the parliament? And Yoav Gallant said, I won't support it in this form. And that was it. He was out. And he wasn't even allowed to make the announcement himself. It was just sent out by the Prime Minister's Bureau as an announcement to the media. I think there's a feeling of shock, even in the Likud, even amongst people who thought that he was on his way out.
A swift decision then from Israeli leadership. So what's the political reaction been like to this?
First of all, it depends where you stand. There were people within the Likud who were advocating this, people to further right than the Likud who are the partners in the coalition who all say, yes, the Prime Minister did the right thing. After all, the problem with Yoav Gallant was that he wasn't tough enough on the reserve officers who were refusing to do their military service, or at least refusing to turn up for training. And so they support that. They say the military doesn't run the country. The military takes orders from the politicians. They're getting the order wrong. However, if you really look at what Benjamin Netanyahu is doing, I think he's sending a message to everyone else in the Likud who might be wavering, and he's showing them that this is the tough stand that he's taking. As a result, people in the opposition have been saying he's not fit to be the Prime Minister any longer. This is retribution. This is the act of a dictator. And the protest movement has called for a protest right now in the middle of Tel Aviv, reacting to this news straight away to say we have a dictator in charge of us even before he has stopped us from being a democracy. So it's a very tense night here in Jerusalem.
Those clips courtesy of the BBC and France 24. And this reform is highly controversial, even just reading, Keaton, the basic premise of it. Because first of all, it's apparently meant to limit the Supreme Court's ability to exercise judicial review. It's meant to grant their governing body of the government the ability to override Supreme Court rulings that deem legislation passed as unconstitutional, and by introducing it with approving with majority of the Knesset members. And it will also diminish judicial review on basic laws, as well as allow for the political rulers, the majority of the members of the Judicial Selection Committee is appointed by the government and effectively control appointment of judges. So the first one, I think, is actually the most, how to put this, stark approach. I'm not sure if I've ever heard a jurisdiction go this far, encroaching on the separation of powers by saying, well, no, we're going to limit the ability of the Supreme Court to say that something is unconstitutional. When, technically speaking, one would argue the Supreme Court would probably be the group of people, that's one of their major functions, to make determinations like that in order to safeguard a nation's constitution. One of the other things now that is, to me, unprecedented. I don't even think what we see like in America, the UK, or Canada comes close to anything like that. But one of the other things is, again, we see a population here that is protesting now. Granted, they have something that's very, very, very stark and apparent, that it's something that other governments in other parts of the world have not touched, at least ones that haven't turned into dictatorships. But the public is willing to come out and have their say, and not kind of like, be very vague or just talk in the rum shops, but I don't want to be involved. No, they want to be involved.
I think it's rather interesting, a couple of things, that Benjamin Netanyahu, who actually came back into politics after an election defeat, came back into politics, and he's now leading a coalition, by the way. So it's not even his party that has the majority within the Knesset. But he's suggesting that the people of Israel voted for these reforms in the last election. But the people of Israel seem to be protesting against this, saying, we have no idea what you're doing and we're totally against this. That's one. Two, the Minister of National Security, who said you need to delay this for many reasons, including for national security purposes. Look at what's taking place. Even Benjamin Netanyahu's home, his compound, the barriers have been breached by protesters. He was in the United Kingdom, I think, last week. That meeting actually focused a lot on what's taking place in Israel, where Prime Minister Rishi Sunak also suggested holding back for now. But the Minister of National Security in Israel took a position and saying, I can't support this in its current form. Wasn't totally against it. Wasn't even given the opportunity to retract his statements, clarify his statements. He was just dismissed.
To me, so what the public seems to be going off is, okay, maybe there's broader considerations, maybe you have very good detailed arguments, but it doesn't seem as though the arguments that you're making, the justification is getting through to the public. It seems as though you're just hell-bent on pushing something through that will give the government more power and authority over a part of governance or a part of the country that traditionally governments don't have power and control over. And to me, this is it's a more extreme example. We haven't reached this far, right? Contrary to what the opposition might say. I don't think that anything that the government has done remotely comes close to this. However, we see now where potentially a perceived lack of transparency and a perceived heavy-handed approach, what that could look like to the population.
Now, the lack of transparency is one thing, but then doing what you want to do as a government, and of course, all the tenets that you just point out of this reform, only strengthens the government's grip on power.
Right. Once you make these things, you keep the grip.
Yes. And people are not going to take very kindly to
that. Is generally what you hear about in dictatorships, how democracies, even if they're not strong democracies, this is how they go from weak democracies with a lot of corruption to full-blown out dictatorships where people are executed on a whim and nobody could say anything about it because now you control everything. But again, my thing is, it's an extreme example, but I would like for our local leaders to understand, look, yes, it's an extreme example. It makes the lesson obvious. These things are bad. Lack of transparency is bad. Because what you just said there, take the context of Israel out of it. The basic premise of heavy-handed approach, doing what you want. To some extent, that's what it feels how the TNT is governed,
And then people...
That the government just does what they want, whichever government of the day it is.
People in Israel, and rightfully so, will argue this is not legal. But then if you're trying to take away powers from the Supreme Court, who's actually going to actually rule whether or not this is legal in Israel? Apart from apart from all of this, it is an extreme example. Fortunately here in TNT, people do not protest to that extent. Fortunately, we've had a day of riots, we've had a day of disruptions. People do not get to that extent.
But I don't know if they're rioting yet, to be fair to the Israelis.
And the thing is, I can only hope that no government does anything to this extreme where somehow Trinidad ends up in that state.
Yeah, but I would just like to point out once again, how many fires, they all seem small. If children being killed by hitmen is a small fire, child abuse is a small fire, the level of violence in general, the situation with water, potholes, our economy, the lack of jobs, the lack of private sector growth in certain aspects, all of these problems, you might want to just say, oh, they're small fires and we don't need to protest. But how many small fires are we going to have?
How many of these things existed before 2020? That you've just pointed out?
To be fair, most of them. To me, the killing of children is the one that is new, that I still can't get over, that we haven't necessarily.
The thing is that people have a say every 5 years here in TNT. So I'll give you a response in 2025. Because the thing is, we've had so many fires, and if all these fires happen, exactly, you would have thought something would change by now. Anyway, let's take a break here on Talking Points, and when we return, well, we welcome our guest this morning. Stay tuned.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship Matt Bean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Site, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife.
Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Mental health can explain the behavior of bullies, but also the impact of those who are bullied.
And you have those individuals who may have, some children have what you call conduct disorders. And a conduct disorder, some of them are like to light fires, kill pets, and all these things. Now, those children could go on into adulthood and be somebody with a personality disorder, as what we call a psychopath or antisocial personality disorder.
Do they pick on or target a specific personality, their victim, or is it across the board?
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Trinidad, come and get blessed at the Good News Fest. Free groceries while stocks last and lots of giveaways like appliances and toys and much more with live music at each venue. 3 days only. In South, March 30th at number 4 Recreation Ground, Palo Seco from 4 p.m. In Central, March 31st at Ancient Alley Promenade, Couva, 6 p.m. And in the East, April 1st, Macoya, Savannah, Macoya, 6 p.m. It's the Good News Fest, 3-day family event, March 30th to April 1st. Lots of giveaways after an encouraging word shared.
Welcome back to Talking Point, and Sean Michael Small and I, we are pleased to welcome this morning the media ambassador representing the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, a man with a lot on his mind, a lot on his shoulders, and a lot to answer for, Acting ASP Ashraf Ali. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Stop
How
looking,
are you all?
Stop looking so stressed.
Yeah. I am not stressed. I'm not stressed.
I know you have a stressful job, but we're here to make it easier.
So you say.
Well, I mean, we trying to make it easy. We're reasonable, aren't we?
Yes, you are. You are.
Okay.
I must admit.
And I will say this, as much as we lament on the TTPS, ironically, one of the few organizations that does a lot of reporting and a lot of communicating and fesses up to reality the situations, like when we got the true detection rates for murders last year. I mean, it's probably some other public sectors might not have wanted to give out such statistics, but I applaud the TTPS for at least giving us that news. And you have more news with regards to another aspect of crime fighting.
Yes, so you would realize that for the last couple of weeks, there were some incidents that was in the public domain and a lot of comments about it. Now, the issue of illegal gambling and the allegations that was made with the social media videos, well, I'm not going to deal with those social media videos. Those are active investigations at this point in time. Right? However, a lot of persons are not aware that there are two aspects of this liquor license and the Gaming Act. And Trinidadians are very, very tactful. So, firstly, under the Liquor License Act 8410, Section 35 gives 35.3 and 4 gives some categories of license that you can have. Liquor spirit license, wine license, restaurant license, grocer's license, going along those lines. Now, when you have those licenses, it also gives you the opportunity to register to or apply for games of amusement.
Right.
That is why you see some of the licensed premises, liquor licensed premises now have these machines where it's considered to be games of amusement. However, they work tandem, two acts work tandem to each other. All right, the Gaming and Betting Act 1119 states in Section 4 have you operating a common gaming house. So once you have those machines in it now, you are now considered a common gaming house. And a lot of persons take the risk because operating a common gaming house you only can be fined $1,500 or 12 months prison. $1,500.
These gaming machines are referring to?
So we're not reaching the gaming machines as yet. We're talking about operating the premises, the premises itself. Now, under Section 20A of the Liquor License Act, once you have the specific type of license, you have the opportunity now to apply to the Liquor License Committee to have the gaming, the machines, we call the machines, for this purpose we call the machines, which is games for amusement, right, or at your premises. And you only allowed a maximum of 20 of those machines.
So you can apply?
So you can apply. Now, each one of the machine has a maximum payout of $5,000 and it must be displayed over the machine, right? All the rules apply in terms of allowing an individual under the age of 16, under the age of 18 playing in machines. So all as an offense, if you read through the whole section, you see the offense, right? It also gives there's an annual tax of $3,000 per machine that the proprietors have to pay. This is where it gets very tricky, in that those individuals do not pay those taxes. Some of those individuals who have these machines are not a licensed premise for the purpose of operating a gaming house. They don't have a liquor license. Some of them have liquor license and never applied for the special permission to have the gaming machines.
Acting SP, let me just interrupt you there for a moment. Forgive me. It's all well and good for you to be reading the legislation to me, and I'm so glad that you're educating us and the public. I would say it's a reasonable assumption to make that, one, a lot of these institutions, however you'd like to refer to them to, such as a bar, have not registered for this license, or two, do not pay what is required. So my next question to you is, you're reading the legislation to me, how many of these institutions or establishments have been actually checked by the police over the course of a year?
Right. So annually, so that is very important, that persons of the opinion that police only going to target certain areas. Annually, every police district, the SDOs in charge, have to visit those liquor license and ensure that they have the required license. Under the Liquor License Act, so you visit and you check to see all the books and registers are also there.
You just used one word saying have to.
Yes, they have to.
That doesn't necessarily mean that they do.
They do. There's a record. There are records at the station because there's a register at the station that you go in. You have to physically see the liquor license, and take the records of just like any other license. There's a date where you pay, and the record is reflective on the registers at the station.
And is this once a year that they have to do?
Annually.
It's annually.
It's annually.
Right. Because I'm just wondering if that is the case. If a second police officer who is not familiar with this institution should go and do a double check, a double verification. Because it's very easy if one police officer comes to my establishment every year to grease the wheels. And, forget about this. You saw this, just sign off on it. What if there are more police officers that go frequently, different police officers that go frequently?
So that is where I'm saying that when you go there, so if you're going, and let's deal with it from the legitimate aspect of it, right? The gray areas on the outside, I will not discuss that because those are allegations sometimes, right? But I will deal with the legitimacy of it. As an SDOIC, a sergeant in the station, he visits those individuals, and he actually writes in the book, right? There's a register. You have to make a note where you visited, and you check all the books and registers. You check all the liquor license, how many alcohol and thing you have on alcohol, all the books and registers, and actually write and sign in the book. So that's an official visit. During the year, right, you have to actually visit once annually. But during the year, you can't visit. Once you're visiting, you must put, once you're a legitimate visit, you must make the notes in the relevant registers. Now, like I said, there are officers who would visit, not make any notes in the register. Right? Those are the challenges they continue to face. And if those persons, we know that these persons are visiting and not making any notes, we are asking the proprietors and continue to ask the proprietors to report such an individual.
But why would they report it? If
Well, how would they know?
No, but if it says I'm getting away.
No, because okay, so if you go, so let's come with the respective the visiting. When you visit, you have to present the books, and if you come to you come to my premises for a visit, and you don't ask for my books.
Yes. Okay.
I'm as a proprietor it raises a red flag, because you're not here on an official visit, and if you ask for anything, that you are accommodating me, you are aiding and abetting me in committing an offense. So you're aiding and abetting the police officer.
No, I hear you are acting SP, but I hope you understand the society we live in today. And so it's not just the issue of the police officers, but it's also the issues of the proprietors.
Exactly. So in the whole context of it, we use the little areas in the legislation. And I'm saying this to show that many of the, so let's do a flip side. The public will go to these business places, and they'll see a machine, and they would engage.
Yes.
Because they're of the opinion that everything is above board. They're not asking you, Mr. Keaton, could I see your license that you paid the tax for this?
Although technically, usually, some sort of signage will display so-and-so is licensed to sell and operate, etc.
So we're talking about the license. You would see a liquor license on the premises
well,
on
they
the
have
front.
Something for
but when you talk
gaming.
about the gaming machines,
No,
you're supposed to see a signage over the machine, maximum payment of $5,000. If you don't see that, there is a red flag. It means that this machine is not legal. But the general public will go in, some person just going to play the machine and not understanding that once you put a little coin into that, you are now participating in a illegal gaming house, and you can be fined $750 or 6 months.
Are you
imprisonment?
Is the Toronto police service aware of the challenges of Weiwei?
Yes.
Good. Because the reason why I bring that up is I don't understand how, for the life of me, as an ordinary citizen, I can drive down Trafford Road and I could point out establishments who are operating Weiwei. I could drive down the Eastern Main Road and I could point out establishments who are operating Weiwei. Why? It's very easy. You see a colourful Bristol board with 35-1 or 34-1. How come the police officers don't actually shut this down? If it's visible, if it's actually visible to the public,
there is a lot of,
it must be visible to the TTPS.
So there's a lot of technicalities in it, and I'm saying because I can't go into the whole technicalities with respect to that. No, honestly speaking, I can't go into the technicalities of it. This is a whole, from a legal perspective. I'm not a legal mind, so if we want to discuss that, I prefer to have somebody from our legal team discuss those technicalities with you. Right? I may say the wrong thing and inform the public wrongly, because there are a lot of technicalities and a lot of...
That's like make any case, prove any
yes,
case.
to prove certain things that we have to verify and justify. So remember, this goes in two directions. It goes, inland revenue has a part to play, and the police service has, and the laws have a part to play, because there are certain type of taxes that has to be generated, certain type of receipts has to be put in place.
You see, the thing is, for me, acting ASP, I hear you. I understand that you know, you want to be precautious because your job is to inform the public and you don't want to mislead them in any form or fashion. I respect that. But common sense, my thinking is, listen, if a police officer or police officers were to conduct an undercover operation, and a police officer in civilian clothing goes to this operation and plays Weiwei, hands them money, they hand them a receipt. Isn't that evidence?
Right?
And that is because Weiwei is illegal, as is.
Right, but you don't get a receipt for Weiwei. Understand that?
How you know that?
Don't worry about that. You don't get receipts. You don't
because I don't know that.
You don't get receipts.
Now,
I mean,
the thing is...
I just say, anybody in the street will know. You don't get...
The thing is, though, I guess this goes back to, of course, you see a lot of American TV, and there's probably some truth to it in their jurisdiction where they do sting operations for drug deals.
Yes.
You don't need a receipt. So now the question is, what about our laws makes it potentially impractical or too difficult?
This is where it gets very challenging and very technical with respect to this type of thing. So I understand that we have been clamming down on some of these activities. So let me just give a little data.
Well, you have like 30 seconds.
30 seconds to give you some data. All right? Let me get some data quick.
And I appreciate the fact that you work
so,
with data.
For persons charged in operating illegal gaming house from since 2020 to March 2023, we have arrested a total of 41 persons operating gaming house. The highest numbers in 2022 when we arrested 28 persons operating gaming houses, right? And for persons who have been charged for the purpose of gambling for the same period, up to this date, March 21st, we have 73 persons have been arrested and charged for assembling for purpose of gambling. Now, it might sound insignificant. It might sound that the police service is dealing with one aspect and we're not fighting crime. These have a correlation with crime.
Yeah.
Easy money, opportunities, fuel certain other aspects of crime. And one of the things that the police service always get chastised for is for law enforcement, enforcing the laws. The laws are there on the books of Trinidad and Tobago. The laws are there for us to enforce. We don't pick and choose the laws that we want to enforce, right? Offenses, no, we don't pick and choose. The offenses are there. However, once they are offenses, we have to enforce the law. We're enforcing some of the laws.
Well, all right. We're being told that we have to take a break for news on the hour. So when we return, we'll potentially wrap up the conversation and open up the phone lines, folks. And of course, you could have your say on the maybe lack of prosecution of Weiwei. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Health Minister tests positive for COVID-19. Former President calls for more powers for President's office. PM to meet attorney in interest of stranded nationals in Syria. And internationally, 26 die in Mississippi tornado. Now for the details. Health Minister Terence Yelting has tested positive for COVID-19. This is the minister's first positive test since the pandemic began more than 3 years ago. The public is informed that the minister is exhibiting mild flu-like symptoms at this time and will remain at home in isolation in accordance with the national COVID-19 protocols. While he recovers, Minister Yelting will continue to perform his official duties from home. Former President Paula May Weeks is calling for the presidential office to be given an investigative authority. Speaking on I-95, she said that the presidential office needs more powers.
Some degree of investigatory function. Because if you are asking the president to be responsible for identifying persons who are nominated to hold certain independent, very responsible, very weighty offices, I think the president should be enabled to do more than to go shooing around asking people, what do you know about X? So that if the president had a mechanism where certain checks could actually be made.
Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, as head of the National Security Council, will today meet with former Speaker of the House of Representatives Nizam Mohammed, who has been advising the government as it relates to the nationals stranded in countries deemed conflict zones. Mr. Mohammed will be accompanied to the meeting by other persons who have been contributing to this effort. The meeting, which will be held at Whitehall, will also be attended by some members of the National Security Council. In international news now, more severe weather could be on its way for the U.S. state of Mississippi following the tornadoes which killed 26 people. Hundreds of people have been displaced in the wake of the tornadoes which tore through Mississippi and Alabama on Friday night. Friday's tornado was the deadliest in the state of Mississippi in more than a decade. At least 25 people have died in the state, with one person being confirmed dead in neighboring Alabama. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching.
But if we died with Christ, we have faith that we will also live with him. We know that Christ has been raised from the dead, and he will never die again. Death no longer has power over him. He died to sin once and for all with his death, but he lives for God with his life. Join WESN as we explore the death and resurrection of Christ with He is Risen, a perspective from varying leaders within the Christian faith. He is Risen, starting March 27th, only on WESN, the content capital. Welcome back to Talking Point. Thank you very much to Mr. Denise Martin for news on the hour. And folks, this is a PSA courtesy of Talking Point. Don't play way, gamble the right way. The legal way, better legal way.
I mean, didn't we have a ad that said that as well at one point?
What was an LCB ad?
I wonder who. Anyway, let's not go into that.
Don't play way.
Before we just open the phone, I just want to ask this for the public to hear. With regards to digitization, because part of me is wondering if that would make the whole situation more efficient. You could cross-reference with the judiciary that's supposed to give out these licenses and have potentially easier record keeping with regards to who did you check, when did you check them, all these minor details. TTPS, is it digitized enough? Is it taking too long? What's going on?
We have a certain level of digitization with certain aspects of it, but getting the rest of things on board. For instance, with respect to license, remember the TTPS does not issue the license. The license are issued via the courts. So the judiciary has to. I'm sure the judiciary will have their records, but not.
It will be paper as well.
I'm not so sure.
Okay.
Whether or not it will be paper or otherwise, but I know they may be doing the aspect of digitization at the same time. But the whole concept of this now, it becomes going one step further, having accessibility to data across the different ministries that will make cross-referencing information a little easier. And that's something I guess through different ministries will have to discuss at the different levels to get that more time, more efficient. But for now, we'll have to work with the systems that we have, where officers have to visit the license dealers, check the relevant books and registers, and make the relevant notes in the books and registers, and verify the license. Right. So these are the things that we have to do in the absence of digitization going forward.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's open up the phone lines now where we give you the viewer the opportunity to call in and join the conversation. Well, Acting SP Ashraf Ali is with us this morning, so feel free to pose questions to him or share your thoughts or concerns with us. We only ask that you do not call in at the very final minute of the call-in segment. You wouldn't get time to make your point. Please be mindful of the time of your contribution. We will have to cut you if necessary. We don't want to, therefore we ask you to be concise. And also kindly mute your televisions when calling in on the program. Feel free to join the conversation. The phone lines are now open and the numbers are on your screen. As we continue with this morning's conversation, Acting ASP, your job is not an easy one. Though I will say sometimes I wonder whether or not you'll complicate it. Because going back to the question I had asked with respect to the illegal operations of Weiwei, and you said, you know, there's a lot to it, and that you don't choose what laws you'll want to enforce. I sometimes wonder whether or not you'll just turn a blind eye. Sometimes I get that impression.
Well, that's a different conversation. It's a conversation that a lot of persons may not understand, but as a law enforcement officer, we have been given the opportunity of discretionary powers. That is subjective. That is very subjective, I would say. And from this is my personal say, not the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service perspective, but based on all my experience in the service thus far, that level of discretion sometimes gets you in trouble. Right? Because, for instance, I'm going to give you a simple example. You're going down the road and as a police officer, you stop an individual on the road who failed to wear his seatbelt. Based on that individual's explanation, the officer may consider the excuse reasonable or otherwise. You may get away with that same excuse. Another officer may say he's not taking that excuse. Same excuse to two different police officers. The level of discretion that is imposed on an officer that an officer has is dependent on how the officer exercises that discretion. And that, I am saying, tends to cause a little more problem for the law enforcement and the public engagement, because when you exercise that level of discretion, persons of your opinion that you're taking sides and you're choosing which one to arrest.
The main fact that you would actually stop the individual for not wearing the seatbelt, I'll give you points. Because my experience is, I have seen Trinidad and Tobago Police Service vehicles at junctions with their lights on. They're parked at the side of the road, but they have their flashing lights on. So I assume that they're monitoring the flow of traffic.
Sure.
Okay, great, excellent. I have seen a number of cars breaking the red light. There's the intersection right here by the port, right? A number of cars breaking the red light. Light is yellow, cars breaking it. Light is red, 5 cars breaking it. The police vehicle never moves.
And that's what I'm saying. Level of discretion. That is a challenge I'm saying. I am saying that poses a lot of problems to the police, because if we enforce strictly,
people will complain.
We will have an issue because really and truly, Trinidad and Tobagonians, right? And I can't speak for anybody else in the world. I'm living in Trinidad and Tobago. We here drive and we do not pay attention to the road traffic laws.
I'll have to stop you there. We have a caller on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
ASP. I have a question for the ASP. Sally.
Yes, sir.
When the TTDF, the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, go out on exercises, any exercise that any arm of that, either the Air Guard, the Coast Guard, the Army, any arm of that part of the agencies that results in holding people for criminal activity, does the police get involved? Anytime they do an exercise and it results in criminal activity, that they discover criminal activity, so they apprehend people, wouldn't the police get involved in charging, because the TTDF does not have that power?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, if the Coast Guard or the Army or the Air Guard is conducting an exercise to
intercept or interdict crime, the TTPS has to be involved or
yes,
will get involved?
Yes, they have to, because the members of the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force doesn't have the power to charge, right? Only the police officers.
Yes.
They don't have the power to charge. So they have the power to arrest.
Thank you, Kolo.
You have a follow-up? Okay, caller from Chaguanas with us this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
I start off with this NIS. Karen claimed that the difference between the various sections for the pension was negligible and supports a new system with no difference between it. I fail to see the logic of that. And how you can have a system that is calling for more expenditure than the total anticipated income. And she claimed they had advice on it. Why the advice was not put to Parliament when this went to Parliament, so that when she come back next time, she can just
We will be sure to pass on your message and ask her.
Good. You talk about charging for the health service. We should start that. We shouldn't start that. That is how it was when I grew up as a boy. In all areas, you had a district medical officer. And you had 3 set of people. You could go and see him privately, where you pay 5 shillings, all the big businessmen and things to go. To go to the ordinary health center, you pay a shilling. And if you didn't have the shilling, you sit down on the other side, and when they finish with them who pay the shilling, they see you. Afterwards, when Mount Hope started up, and they didn't have enough money, they started some pain clinics. And when the government changed, of course, as usual, the next time just threw it out. What we want is when these things are being dealt with, they are properly ventilated and included in the administrative reports. And finally, on these gambling machines and police inspections and whatnot, when I worked in the magistrate court, the police, in examining these premises with liquor license and whatnot, one of the things they always checked was the availability of parking. Why have they stopped doing that? Because nearly all the bars around by me have extended the bar to cover the parking area, and I see no action about it. Secondly, these gambling machines is being operated under a non-profit system. Right? This was in the old days where you have all them playway and all them, not playway. Anyway, I forget that. But they're supposed to keep records of income and expenditure. And they're supposed to pay income tax. Nobody is checking that. If you remember a few years ago, when some Americans came here running these casinos, the American government sent the people here and arrested them for not paying income tax. When it was brought to the attention of our Minister of Finance, he said, oh no, that's illegal.
Very quickly, Professor.
Which is not so. Our law do not exclude income. All income is taxable. Any questions, gentlemen?
None. But thank you very much. Have a good day. Keep up. Okay. How do we continue from there? That was a lot. Thank you very much, Professor, for your contribution.
Just that some of the challenges that we face now is because the scope of society has increased. Just take the traffic situation. There was a point in time when our road network was more than sufficient. It's not anymore.
He made a very good point with respect to the traffic, though, which I will get to in a moment because we have a caller with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Yes, gentlemen. Sean is asking if I had another point. And I was going to get to that same gambling operation. ESP, I live in San Fernando, and I am in the southern area, the wider south. And sometimes I come in, I go down the road, I coming back up, and then I stop in a bar, have a beer or something. And you know, I have seen so many of those machines, and I have never seen that sign that you talk about, that payout sign. I have never seen that sign. I am talking up to 2 weeks ago I stopped in a place. But I know, I have never seen a sign in that sign with those gambling machines. And I can tell you this, that sometimes you see the police vehicles stop there to, they come in to get something to drink, water, whatever. And is it that some of your officers are not aware of that same provision that you're talking about? Could you answer that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. Invite Sean and I for a beer sometime. We'll get to that point in a moment. Good morning, caller from El Socorro. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Hi.
Good morning. I would like to commend the police on the new building they put up on the Eastern, that credit union. I think that is a plus for the police service, credit union. However, I want to speak about something else. Now, we ought to commend the police for investigating crime at the lower level, these misled boys who shooting and killing one another and whatnot. But what about crime at the white-collar level? What about a certain section of the community that is playing illegal play? They brought the illegal play with the Trinidad as far as I'm concerned. They don't pay taxes. They take part in nothing in this country except making the money. The police service dealt with the Susu people and so on, and other things. Why it is these people continue to operate here and the police doing nothing about it? Is the police trained only to deal with people at the lower levels? Imagine a minister in this country, the Minister of National Security, could say, don't blame the well-to-do people for bringing in guns and other things. You could go down in Carcass and get a gun. He is the Minister of National Security. If he know that, why don't he see about the border? Okay? These are the contributions I want to make.
Thank you very much, caller. Caller on the line with us from Tunapuna.
Hello, good morning, gentlemen. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I am calling from Tunapuna. I want to deal a little bit again, not long, but to touch on the NIS issue. I said it on this program on many occasions. The problem with the NIS is we lose 25% of our labor force since 2015. Our labor force was strong in 2015. Our labor force was over 520,000 people. By the end of the first 3 years after that, when Mr. Rowley and Imbert coming in office before COVID, that had dropped to 402,000 people, gentlemen. That is the problem with NIS. 21% of our labor force has been cut. So that is the amount of money we're not being able to go into the NIS contributory fund. We lose 25% about that labor force from 2016 to 2019 before COVID. Before COVID. I don't want to know the problem for it. I am saying that is the reason for the problem in the NIS today. And they want to carry and blame the age and all this sort of thing. But that is the issue. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. I will ask you, caller, if you can give me the information of how much of that 21 or 25% was actually paying NIS. Because the labor force does not necessarily equate to contributions.
I think that's the assumption, even if they come from the NIS itself.
So again, I ask of you, how many of those individuals? I'm not making an argument against what you're saying. It's good what you've raised.
I hate to say this, but Edie Stewart, I think, opened up a can of worms for me. To what extent is reporting done of statistics accurate?
Well, you said it
or
before.
In good faith?
They're lies, damn lies, and then there's statistics.
Basically. Well, I didn't say it. A former commissioner said it.
Caller on the line with us from Claxton. Good morning, caller.
Morning, Sean. Morning, Keaton.
Good morning.
First call for the new year, for Shaman.
It's a long time.
Very long time.
Yeah. I was down but not out. This one is for the inspector there. We have places around the area in Claxton here that play the illegal play. You go into there, you get in when you play your mark, you get in a little receipt that shit. Might be 10 beers, it mark, or 18 Guinness, or 5 green sand. You know, all these things. And you notice policemen go and pay their mark inside it too, so how they do not know it's illegal? Because the odds is higher than the normal booth. the odds are high. So that's about it for me.
Good point, caller. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Good hearing from you. Acting ASP, tying back to this caller, to the caller from San Fernando. Is it just that the officers aren't aware?
So there are in fact some truth in it, because there is in fact a lot of police officers may not be familiar with this legislation, because it's not one that a lot of persons pay attention to. It's the technical aspects of it, because when you go into a bar, you don't really pay attention to these fine aspects of it, because every time we are accustomed with the aspect of having a liquor license to sell alcohol.
Yes.
When you read the legislation, and when you read the legislation and you read some of the fine prints in it, it gives a lot of opportunities that not the general public is aware of. Not even the police officers are fully aware of all these fine tunes. So then when one or two of the officers or a small group of officers are actually enforcing this aspect of it, it appears that these are the ones who are targeting, but these are the ones who may be more familiar with it. Right? So it's twofold that we have to get a lot of more persons, officers in charge of the station districts and commanders in charge of district, understanding that this aspect of it and what we are going forward with to enforce this aspect of it with the illegal gambling aspect aside of it.
All right, final caller for the morning from Tunapuna. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning. Gentlemen, let me just clear the air as to where I get this information from. This is information from the NIS. It has people who had was to go to the Freedom of the Information Act to get that information, which was hidden. And that is where I get this information. I had a court figures there, so 516,000 people were paying, and 402,000 people end up paying 3 years after. That is the difference. Approximately 112,000 people were off the labor list before COVID. And okay, so check the NIS record.
Okay, thank you, caller.
All right, caller. Thank you.
I'll just say, no, we understand and we acknowledge. In fact, I think I even said it could even come from the NIS. There's a reason why I said Mr. Edie Stewart opened up a can of worms with regards to how now do we accept all reporting of statistics just as it is on the face value of what is said. Because we acknowledge there's corruption. Why couldn't reporting of information also be corrupt? That's the thing. It's not reasonable for us just to say, well, it must be true because they said it. Oh, there's also corruption there. Yeah, but it's official statement, so it must be true. Still, we don't believe in politicians, but we will believe the public service, which we complain is being run by the politicians. The public service where people collect a check but don't necessarily, not all of them work. So I understand what you're saying though, and it's a reasonable case to make because the information comes from a reasonable source. So you're not wrong to make your case, caller. You're not wrong.
How now, brown cow? Anyway.
Quickly, I just wanted to ask, one of the other things is, of course, the question is, police officers, why they're not doing this, why they're not doing that. Could it be because I believe you started up after the news talking about police officers have a bit of a leeway with regards to how they conduct their duties?
A level of discretion.
Discretion. Could it be that some officers hide behind that level of discretion where they might be acting in bad faith, but then when challenged, well, I use my discretion. I didn't see anything wrong.
And that is what I'm saying. That is what I mentioned. That level of discretion that is given, right? That is tends in some aspect could work for or against you. And generally, I mean, if it works for an individual, no one questions it because it's in your benefit.
Yes.
If it works against you, then you come out and say that the police is doing this and the police is this and the police is that because it works against you, right? So one of the things and I just want to mention with respect to the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, they have been there on the books for longer than I have been around. We don't read our laws in Trinidad and Tobago. We don't articulate ourselves. We don't read to find out what is required of you when you're doing certain things. There are a lot of persons, and I keep talking about the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, which is one of the acts you need to know when you're going to get your driver's permit. Because you are a driver on the road, right? And you need to know what is the laws on the road. A lot of persons fully aware that you're not supposed to break a red light.
Yes.
Because when you're doing your regulation, they give you a question.
Well, we assume they did the regulation.
Well, let's say so, right? But they continue to do it, and we keep on harping on the police need to enforce the laws on the roads of Trinidad and Tobago with errant drivers. And I am saying, if we take away all our discretionary powers under the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Act, it have no drivers on the road.
Yeah.
It have absolutely no drivers on the road.
Well, potentially.
Police officers included?
And police officers included.
There's a can of worms, because one of the things with regards to the Motor Vehicle and Road Traffic Acts that needs to be done is the licensed officers need to be doing their jobs and not doing extra duties that have nothing to do with their jobs. And those who know will know.
Anyway.
And that's all I'll say about that.
Acting SP Ashraf Ali, thank you very much for joining us once more on Talking Point. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to next week.
Yes, sir. Don't play way. Right?
No.
Don't play way.
Don't play way.
Play way.
Yeah, that is not a applier, but the key is that we are going into the summer vacation as we hit August, right? Just remember the outside there. I know these children will be coming out of schools, and then we'll have the whole aspect of it where persons will be going to the beaches and all those other areas where they want to venture again. So then we'll have the whole aspect of additional patrols and additional increases, because we will have this issue on the roads again.
Yeah. ASP waving off Easter yet. Hold up. Don't rush us so quick.
We need to keep on sensitizing the public over and over of what is coming.
I just want to say it quick. We are not machines. Discretion for the police service is not a bad thing. It's actually an important and a good thing. We just need a proper arm to enforce our laws and hold the police accountable. That's, I think, in this case, where we're falling down.
Discretion could be a bad thing if a police officer says, I ain't bothering with that. I'm not doing that. It could be. It could be. Anyway, I'm Keaton Shaw. This has been Talking Point. Just remember, today is a good day to have a good day. I hope you have a good day and a great week ahead. And should things go good, which we hope we do, we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Good day. Bye-bye.